So I started with my first ever clip by just right clicking and replacing with After Effects composition. Now what this does is it opens up an After Effects composition and links it to my Premiere Pro so that I can just edit side by side and it will transform right onto my project. So what I started by doing is I cut the clip so that it would just be me popping up, and right here you see me cutting it to where I start running in, so that's how long the clip will last. I then edited in over that and masked myself coming in relation to the time I have available to run in. I then put in my portal a special effect, what's a video I got from Production Crate. I just, as you can see, I then masked out my body, because to go through the portal I need to make it look like my body itself is coming through that portal. So I need to just do my body itself on the top layer, so I have to mask it out as close as I could to my body and move the mask path along with it so that it moves with my body, and so that you can't see any of the outside around me but just see me walking in. Now I started to feather it and then edit it more according to how well it looked and if it actually realistically looked like me walking through the portal. I had a short practice with this, and as you can see it was a bit off center as well, so I just changed a few things around, such as the mask expansion, moving the special effect itself. And the mask expansion is how I actually come out the portal, because it looks like a sort of step out, because it comes from the center and then opens up to my whole body in the mask. And I thought this was the most effective way. Now, as you can see right here, I copied and pasted the exact coloring so I could do it on the two clips I had, as I needed one clip of the portal coming in and a reverse clip of the portal coming out, just so it looked more realistic, and it had a fluent way of opening and closing, with allowing me to carry on walking after the portal had closed instead of just opening and cutting it there. So as you can see, I was just messing around with how well it looked, adjusting the mask at certain places, and yeah, I kept rewatching it just to see any errors, and then that was it. I rendered it and watched it along, and this is what it looked like for my first ever edit of my production, me walking through the portal. Now after this I just cut this clip and then replaced it with After Effects, saved it in the location I wanted to save it. Now this I only wanted to show a hint of his powers, so all I had to do was start tracking his eyes. I started with the left eye just because it's easier for me. Tracked along from where I thought it should start, from where it I made two null layers so that I can put these tracks onto the null layer, so when putting multiple effects on I can just parent them with the null so that multiple things can track along with this track I've tracked of the eyes. As you can see, I parent the right eye to the right null, the track of the right eye I did. Now how I did it, I just put the object to the size I wanted it, and just to see a rough version of what it would look like. I then thought it'd be best if I cut out the flash that starts there, because it looks less realistic. I think it just doesn't look very nice. And then I just did the second eye the same as I did the first, just parented it to the null, and then I just sized it so that it fit in the eye. And yeah, I think this was a quite simple edit, and I just ran through it to see how it looked. And then after this I actually didn't like the blue, and in the story I wanted Will to be an angel, so I actually decided to tint them both to clear white. I thought this was just more effective, and then rendered it, and this is how it came out. Just a brief hint of Ash's powers. Now next here I wanted to do the section of me conjuring up a knife in my hand. Now this is just a little way of showing my powers as Satan, and it's just something I thought would be best for the film. Now the blend didn't go quite nicely because the camera was handheld, so we tried keeping as still as we could. So I tried blending them, but to blend them more, I actually put a pop thing over it just so it looked more realistic, the more pop sound effect, and then now after this I wanted to do the scene of Will looking at me walk away, or Ash looking at Satan walk away, and the way I'd planned to do this was make it quite blurry, make the screen shake, and have parts of his eyes opening and closing because, you know, he's kind of been stabbed, he's losing his vision, he's blinking slowly, and he's slowly falling. So what I did, as you can see, is I put a wiggle on the layer above so that it just, the layer above what was, had its opacity put down. It wiggled and looked like it was moving, looked like it was unstable, and then the layer below it was still, and I just moved these so it kind of looked like it was shaking, his vision was blurry, it was not straight, and it looked like he was going to pass out. I then rendered this, and this is how it came out, and I enjoyed how it looked because it was just a nice way of showing Ash as a POV shot. Now, this next bit, I decided to just sort out my monologue because on the first take it looked very plain. It was just one shot and it was quite long, so I decided that I would actually put some clips over it, some B-roll to make it more interesting. I filmed a variety of different things, but only ended up adding less than that, just so it looked more fluent and it was more enjoyable for the audience because it was a long narrative speech, just something that would make it easier. I then added the close-up of my dad when he says son, just because, again, it made it more personal, made it more emotional. Now, as you can see, I then decided instead of me just walking out of this shot, I would have me walk through a portal again, due to the fact that I'd already did some portal effects, and I thought, why not do it again just to make it more creative and make the scene a bit shorter because it was quite long and dragged out a bit, just me walking off screen. So I did what I did before and masked out the tree so that once I'm off the screen, I am off the screen when I'm meant to be through the portal. And then did another close body track when nearing the portal. I copied and pasted the portal from before. I actually opened that file up and copied and pasted it, so it had the same come in and come out. It just didn't have the same coloring or opacity timings. So as you can see, I was just going through the mask as I walk through, just quite simply. It wasn't a difficult task, it was something I just had to quickly do, as I'd already known how to do it. I thought just by this point I would just do the expansion out, so it looked like I then walked in again. I did the colouring from before. I went back and just made it look how it was before, so it was very accurate. There was no continuity errors. I just fixed up the mask because a few points were off, a few of the changes were a bit off, so I just tried to make it look as fluent as possible. Now, as you can see, it started looking very realistic, as I'd learnt before. I kept it quite close because due to the feather, it kind of showed a bit of the greenery behind. So I really wanted to make this look realistic as possible. So yeah, I just then moved the portal and then cut it out to make it look like it was behind the tree. Just something that the audience could pick up on. And it looks bigger, so it's a bigger target for me to walk through. Now, this is how it ended up looking, what I think was pretty good, from not planning to do that. Originally, I planned to just walk off and that be that. Now, next, I wanted to do the Will waking up as an angel with his enhanced power. Now, originally thinking about it, I didn't know if to just go plain or very over the top. But after seeing the track and seeing the look, I decided that I would just do the basic null and solid shaping. Do the mask path and parent it just so that the eyes move along. And just added a fill to make a nice white glow as was meant to be an angel instead of a devil, because Satan's a fallen angel and Ash's character is meant to be doing the right thing, so I thought we would make him an angel. Now what you can see here is me making a circle out of a mask on just a normal white solid, and the reason I'm doing this is because I wanted more of a glow out of Ash's eyes, and the glow effect on the actual solid mask doesn't go out too far and isn't very noticeable. So I decided to actually make circle layers, just feather it and turn the opacity down so it looks more of a genuine glow out of his eyes to just show more of his powers. I didn't want to give him veins like Satan because I feel like that's a very evil thing, so I thought maybe just the eyes showing pureness inside him was a good enough reference. As you can see, I did re-edit the mask a bit because it didn't look very accurate, so I just wanted to touch it up. I also made it look like I opened my eyes as well by moving the mask from closed to open, just making it look more realistic, because I've made mistakes before where I've decided to just turn the opacity of it down instead of shrinking it, and then I thought it just didn't look right. So as you can see, I just redid what I did before, made the circle a bit smaller as well because it was quite big last time. I wanted it to just be around the eyes, just because it's more of the eyes glowing, not the whole face. So after rendering it, this is actually how it looked. It looked very nice. I thought, yeah, the awakening of his powers, just quite simple but still quite effective. Now this next part was actually a lot harder than anticipated, because obviously you can see me replacing the After Effects, but this is Will sitting up with the newly found power. Now the track wasn't tracking his eyes because of the darkness in his eye. It was a bit of a struggle for me, so I had to manually track his eyes and put them to the nulls. And it was just something I found difficult, but it's something I could overcome. So instead of just doing the track on this, the track didn't work very well, so I had to do a lot of mask path, and I had to change the shape of the eye the whole way through. So it doesn't look as realistic due to the fact that I'm creating this eye shape off of what I think it would look like at his place. I tried making it as accurate as possible just because it was a hard track and I tried my best. Now with the turning, I did just turn the opacity down just because it was easier and it wasn't noticeable, but it was just something slightly bad on my end. Now, yeah, as Will sits up, you can see that it looks quite realistic. It doesn't look the best, but it's something I couldn't really alter, and something I was still quite happy with, keeping in mind that I couldn't possibly track this very well, and I had to do it manually with no point I could actually place the marker, so it was a bit rough. My Premiere Pro actually then crashed, as you can see. It was a bit of a bummer, but I just carried on, and again, this was another track that for some reason it didn't stick with the eye, so I had to do a manual track. This one wasn't as bad, it was just because I think it was such a drastic face to the left and right that it just couldn't keep in track and didn't think it was moving that far. So I just stuck along with both the eyes and attached them to the nulls, created the solids and feathered them like I did before, and just changed the mask path as he turned his face down and back from clicking his neck. I thought this was something what would be very good to edit, and I thought would be very appealing, is that I actually moved the eyes sideways with him. Now before, I never really took mask paths into account as much. I kind of just made the mask and tried moving with that. But in this production, I wanted to make it as realistic as possible, so I actually moved the mask path with it to make it look as realistic as possible. I was very happy with the edits on the eyes and how they turned out, And as you can see, it looks very realistic. The glow was a bit too intense, but I turned that down later in editing. But yeah, it didn't look too fake. There was a little bit of stuttering in the eyes, but that was just due to the fact that the mask, I had to do it manually, so it did go a bit off. But I think overall it looked very realistic. Now, this part I wanted to do the punch. Now, this was a very important scene for me because originally it was meant to be our two fists colliding. But as you can see in my behind the scenes video, I decided to be nice to Will because I'd put him through so much strife that I would actually take some of the fake blood as well. Now, as you can see here, before I actually start the edit, I was making sure the clip's aligned because it goes from a running shot to a still shot. So I wanted to make sure that I actually make it look like it's still a fluid motion. Now, the punch itself, it was very important. I wanted to show that Ash had still got his powers, and that, as you can see, the punch was actually very far away from me. We didn't realize how far away it was, but I knew that from videos I've watched and past experience editing, I could make this look realistic and actually good. So I first off made a mask path of Will's fist along through the punch, so that I can actually stretch out the fist towards my face, create a tight mask so it doesn't cover my face, and just so it looks realistic. I didn't want to add too much in. And now here you can see me testing out each different effect I could have possibly had for the punch, how I could have made it look. I didn't know whether to track the punch, the flame with the punch, or track it with the face, but I ended up just keeping it as a motion there and speeding it up, just because I wanted it to be a punch on the face and kind of make it that strength is the reaction. So that's how this punch came to be. It was a Nova. It was the same effect used on Will's eyes. And then, yeah, I just wanted it to be better. So as you can see here, I then tracked the arm as well. This wasn't for the look of the punch. This was actually a tint. I wanted to make it white, as if Will had like a glow in his punch, as if he'd awoken his powers, and you can see this just strength burst out. Now, something I knew through editing, what people might not see, is that although it looks very fake from frame by frame analysis, it actually looks very realistic when you actually watch it, because it goes by so fast, and I've only edited it actually only like 10 frames, what's barely noticeable to the eye. Now, as you can see, while I was talking, I tracked the eye and have edited the mask path again, because I have to keep with continuity. Will still has his eyes awoken, he's still surging with his power, so I had to just make his eyes, and due to the amount of movement, there was a lot of mask pathing on both eyes, because not only did he blink a few times, what was again a bit difficult, but he actually also he moved his face a lot at different angles, so there was different eye shapes. I mean, it was easier for me to edit just because I could see his eyes clearly, so it wasn't that hard to edit. It just took a lot of time to do the individual mask path and making it look like a realistic eye shutting. So this is the whole scene by itself: Will's eyes awakening, him sitting up and then turning, looking at me, me dropping it. So this is just the scene after the effects. This is how I wanted to see it, and I just wanted to analyze it, see how good it looked, if there was any like edits I was going to change. And obviously there were a few I'd change in later editing, but I was proud with how it looked so far. And as you can see, the eyes weren't done in there yet. As you can see, I was analysing the punch scene very intensely because it was important. Now, this section is another punch I do on Will. I just wanted to do what I did before, where I stretched out the fist so the punch looked more realistic and something I could just appreciate more. It would only be about a few frames, but it was just something in my mind what would make it better, what no one would notice, and it's just something, it's an effect I've learned that's very suitable when editing to actually make a punch look more realistic is making it look like it connects over the face. So as you can see, you cannot see that I've stretched the arm, but it looks like it's actually made a connection, because in your brain for a split second you've seen a fist in front of a face. So it was just something to make the scene look more realistic on a simple punch. I then also wanted to do another hint of the power in Will's eyes with another Nova burst, like I did at the start, just because it's another thing that's angered him, where it's made an effect where his powers are starting to emerge again. Now, I wanted to do this throughout the film, where there was sections where you could see his power awakening, and I thought this was a perfect moment and that it would just be good to add in. I did the tinting again and mask tracking. It was quite quick as a thing to do, and it was quite easy, and it's just something I was used to. Now, this was the dream sequence I started. Now, this was one of my hardest scenes to do and one of my most creatively challenging scenes, because I had to add in 3 different green screen clips what I'd filmed, not very last minute, but quite late into the production. I then also had to stabilize this stuff, because on the day of filming it was handheld without any straps or anything, so it was a bit shaky. I had to find a good point to actually track with, so even though it looks still a bit shaky, that it's more stable as a video. Now, I then had to edit the third bit, just so, not green screen it yet, but just see how the clips work together. Now, I then started on the green screen with Owen, but as you can see, it was a bit difficult because of the lighting in the room. It was quite difficult to actually get him to do that. Now, I was working alongside a video that I'd done before to make the ghostly aura. I'd actually forgotten the technique, that's why I had to go back to the video, and I just wanted to make sure that I could create a ghostly aura in these all of my characters. So it took a bit of time for me to properly configure it on Owen and then actually work on the others. And I think this was good because Owen's green screen was the hardest because he was the tallest, and the last green screen with my mum was actually filmed at my house, so there was a lot of abundant light because we filmed outside. But with these two, they were filmed inside in a low light room, so the darkness of the green screen behind them did quite alter our production, but I ended up working past it and it still looked quite realistic in both of them. I think I green screened it well enough just so that the ghost aura looked great. And as you can see, my mum's green screen was easiest, her editing was the easiest, it went by quickest, and it was just something minor I needed to change. Now, what I'd realised later is there was actually a way of making this look better instead of them having this kind of circle around them, and I found this out when editing on my mother. And as you can see from what it looks like now, it actually drastically changes from when you can see it in the final production. Now, I also had to feather these people in, because it's more like they're appearing, saying their line, and disappearing in his dream. I'm kind of making them look like these angelic, ghostly figures in the dream, because they're the people he needs to save who could possibly die. They're the people who all have personal meaning to him. And I thought this was just a very wholehearted scene, and I thought this was the best way to go about it. Make it look very ghostly and spiritual, more of a, you have to do this. So I then did the same edits on the close-ups of them all saying get up. I did this of them together because, again, it's something personal, shouting for them to get up. They all like challenging him to wake up, to fight, to carry on, to awaken his hidden power. And I think also the ghostly white aura helps show their power. Now, this is where I found out the whole better way of them looking more ghostly. And it's just something that made it look a bit better, made it look a bit more fluent, and didn't cut off as much as them due to the green screen. So I think overall it looked very good, and I was proud of the result I'd got. And as you can see, rendering it did take a while because I edited a lot, I green screened a lot out of this. This was definitely my biggest file, and I was very proud of how it came out because it really did add a lot to the scenes, and it did look quite realistic. Now, Later in post-production, I did change the way these guys open in because I think it was a bit quick, but I just didn't have time to edit it at that moment in time. So I was just matching the audio back up because I'd obviously moved the clips inside so they didn't link up with the audio no more. I then, after some feedback from friends after watching a first draft in real life, I didn't make a survey of this. They told me that they thought that when he says enraged with the fire of 1,000 when his eyes light up and enraged, that I should actually make it in the next shot of him fade out instead of it just being back to normal. And I thought this was a very good idea, so I then put the veins back on and got the video. Instead of getting the video of the special effects back up, which was too long, I decided just to make a solid, turn it red and just keep it like that because it's fading out in a split second. So I thought, just to make it fade out, I'll just make it normal so it still looks like the actual eye power he has is fading out. It was just a quick little edit to make it look better. Now, as you can see here, this was a lot of the montage shots that I hadn't filmed on the other days of filming. They were shots that I wanted to film later in production, just because I needed to do the bulk, and then the montages would be the just the fluent path between the start, middle, and end story parts. So as you can see, I was just chopping them together, trying to make it look good, just because it's something that I thought was best. So yep, I just put in these clips, faded them out, just put them nicely together to make a nice montage between, like I said, between the three sections. Just something that I thought I'd film just because it's the creation of the intersections, because in my first draft it was just a cut and then middle and then a cut then end, and it wasn't very fluent, and this was definitely something I had to do, and I'm glad I ended up doing it. So yeah, I then was told in my feedback that I should add more demon powers. Now, I was always contemplating editing this final shot, but I thought it would be best, and I thought I would actually really enhance Satan's power. So there's more veins emerging, his eye is more red, there's like embers and smoke as if he's about to transform into his true form. Obviously, it's only 3 seconds, so I'm not going to make him transform into a new form, as I don't have the editing ability to make something CGI, and I think in the time made it would be super rushed to turn it into a CGI character. So what I did is I just enhanced the seriousness of everything, and as you can see, I added in embers over Will's shoulder, so it looked like it was on me, as if I was like setting on fire, transforming like I said. I tested color on the veins to see if I wanted like veins popping out. Now, I also stole an effect from another production, maybe in works, what was a flash aura around a static body. Now, I thought I'd make this a dark, less opaque thing, just because it's like electricity power coming off me. And yeah, it was just something I thought looked good, and it would show more powers in Satan. Now, as you can see in this shot, I then edited the final bit of the mask.